Get your greasy little face up next to the radio because it's time for America's favorite radio program, Animal Stories. And now here in person is the Animal Stories news team anchorman, your charming and delightful old Uncle Lair, and him in person, little Tommy. Hi, Tommy.
Good morning, Uncle Lair.
Little Tommy, you have probably often wondered why camels can go so long without water.
Oh, I know that. They stick the water up there in the hump.
No, they don't.
Oh.
That's a common fallacy. All that's in that hump, little Tommy, is fat.
Oh.
This is very educational here. Scientists have been studying this for 30 years, trying to figure out how come camels can go for such long periods in the desert without water. And they've been doing some experiments on camels around the Dead Sea in Israel. Well, they found out. It's because camels have this great big huge membrane in their nose. Now see, okay, you look up my nose.
It's not their humps?
No, it's not, little Tommy.
What do they use the humps for?
I don't know.
What do you want?
You look up my nose.
Okay.
Little Tommy. Now, you see a membrane up there. It's only about in your average human nose.
Oh, way up there, yeah.
Only covers about 4 7/10 square inches, while if you looked up a camel's nose, their membrane totals nearly 400 square inches.
Wow.
So, you see, that acts as kind of a one-way valve. It moistens the dry desert air as they inhale it into their lungs, but then it holds back the moisture when the air is exhaled. See, now, when I breathe in and out, I'm losing a lot of moisture there.
You got a Kleenex?
But the camel's got that huge membrane and doesn't let the moisture out, and that's how come they can, they save about 68% of the moisture.
How about that?
Way, see?
What's that membrane called?
It's called a camel's nose membrane.
Oh, that's the scientific name?
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we have for Animal Stories this morning, boys and girls. Tune in again at this same time tomorrow for more.
Can I stop looking up your nose now?
Yeah, it might be a good idea, little Tommy. A tragic story in the insect news from my own personal experience
Oh,
yesterday.
really?
Well, Tommy, I was out on the golf course yesterday with Jeff Hendricks and a couple of other guys. And we were walking down the fairway, and there was this teenage-type kid who worked for the golf course, and he was driving around this little tractor and pulling this little cart, and he was picking up limbs that had been blown down in the last storm from the trees.
Uh-huh.
And I was walking right by him. He was underneath this one tree, and there was this great big long limb, and it was too long to fit in his cart, so he was going to break it in half. And he stuck his foot in the middle of it and, pulled on one end and snapped it, and then he lost his balance and fell down, and the part that he'd broken off hit this tree limb right above him, and right there was this huge hornet's nest. Oh, Tommy. Within 1 second, his body was covered with hornets.
Kid gonna be okay?
I think so. We saw him back out on the golf course about 3 hours later. He was working again, but he was running and screaming, and it was terrible.
Did you do anything to help this kid?
No, I ran as fast as I could in the opposite direction, little Tommy. There's not much you can do when somebody gets attacked by hornets.
Yeah?
Except just get out of there. So that's what I did. It seemed like, I know it doesn't sound too heroic, but, hey, I don't want to get stung. But I don't think he even went to the hospital, and I think, boys and girls, if you ever get stung by a whole swarm of bees or a bunch of hornets, the first thing you better do is get yourself to a hospital.
Yeah.
Well, here's something we got in the mail this morning, little Tommy.
Don't you feel a little embarrassed that you didn't even do anything for him?
What am I supposed to do? Get off my back? I mean, the hornets are all over this guy.
If a guy's on fire, you take a coat and you wrap him and you roll him on the ground and put the fire out.
Right. Well, what are you supposed to do with hornets? Now, I could have went up there and helped him beat off them hornets, and they just started stinging me, too. Hey, no thanks. Well, here's something we got in the mail.
Did he know that you just stood there and, I mean, just took off running? I mean,
Hey, he was...
what did he say 3 hours later?
Well,
hey, thanks, pal.
He didn't speak to me, little Tommy. But really, there was nothing I could do to help him. So he'd just kind of knock it off. Police horse stomps elderly woman.
Wow.
Here's a great story from St. Louis. Little Tommy says a 60-year-old woman was knocked down Friday night when she was hit by a police horse, bolted into a saloon on the St. Louis River. This mounted policeman was sitting on his horse in front of the Muddy Waters Tavern, and some drunk stuck a pin in his horse's rear end.
Yeah?
Horse naturally was startled, bolted right through the open doors of the tavern, and ran right over this 60-year-old woman, knocked her to the floor, but she's going to be okay.
Oh, wow.
Well, this poodle story is going to bring a tear to your eye, little Tommy. He writes, "Dear Uncle Larry and little Tommy, recently I was witness to a tragic event, and I wanted you and your faithful listeners to share my sorrow. As I was entering the liquor store in Lake Forest to buy my lunch the other day, I noticed a toy poodle trying to thread his way through the traffic at Lake Forest's busiest intersection. After being narrowly missed by 2 Cadillacs and a Mercedes SL, of course, Lake Forest is a wealthy community.
Sure is.
After being narrowly missed by these 2 Cadillacs and a Mercedes SL, it arrived safely at the far side of the street, and I and my fellow bystanders breathed a collective sigh of relief. Continuing on its jaunty way, the tiny dog then made the fatal mistake of stopping to squat on the adjacent Chicago and Northwestern tracks, directly in the path of the 1151, which does not stop in Lake Forest.
It's not a local, it's an express. Oh, wow.
John says, I was so shaken by this tragedy that I drank more lunch than I usually do and had to go home from work early.
Oh, wow.
No pictures, though, because didn't have his camera. Well, here's one more story sent in by a farmer from Union Mills, Indiana. Story from his own personal experience. He writes, Dear Uncle Larry and little Tommy, my wife recently brought home a stray dog, which was running lost along the road. Well, the dog took a fancy to my chicken coop and digs holes under the fence. Then she heads into the coop and steals eggs. It's one of them egg-sucking dogs.
Once they get the taste, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't know what to do until my neighbor, Fred, who is the best farmer in Union Mills, told us to make a small hole in an egg and fill it with hot chili powder.
Oh.
Well, we did. And for sure, now the dog won't even come near an egg anymore. The only problem was that we had to teach the dog to walk backwards downwind in order to keep her fur from catching fire. Jeez. Oh, you rural Americans are so crude with your humor. That's disgusting.
We love it.
Here is an amazing scientific breakthrough regarding cow manure. It says here, Australian scientists have developed a way to